The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Welcome to Moments of Strength. I'm your host, Mary Kaufman. In this show, we celebrate the incredible resilience of mothers, showing up through life's challenges, growing through every triumph, and carving out space for their own passions and identity. We are here to uplift and reassure every mom that you are not alone, and asking for help is a powerful strength. Each episode brings a story of motherhood's beautiful chaos. I'm happy you can join us for today's inspiring journey. And today's guest is Meghan. Meghan, thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And Meghan actually was referred to some of our former guests, Rose and Michaela, who were here. So thanks to them for referring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm happy you decided to come on. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about what the show is about, but just to recap, we're going to talk a little bit about your background and your journey to and through motherhood, and then how you balance that with your personal and professional pursuits. And that really is an aim to support mothers that might be watching, or people that are aspiring to be parents, just so they don't feel alone. You
Sure.
know, as moms, we feel alone a lot, even when you're surrounded by people. So I want the viewers and anybody who tunes in to understand that they're not alone. They don't have to recreate things. There are resources out there. And even just hearing life experiences in the form of stories from someone else can be helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's the aim of the show. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And, you know, you can start with your background, share as much or as little as you want. And you can bounce around too. But
Sure, yeah. Okay, well, how long do we have? So I moved to the Madison area when I was just entering first grade with my family, my brother and my parents. And so grew up around this area.
Okay.
I had a great childhood, loved school, graduated from Oregon High School, not too far from here. And after high school, I went on to college at UW La Crosse.
Okay.
I majored in business, specifically marketing and public relations. That's actually where I met my husband.
Okay.
I jokingly say that he sort of followed me home back here. And then a few years later, we were married. And we now have two boys.
Okay.
They are 7 and 9, so first and third grade here in Sun Prairie. They keep us incredibly busy.
I'm sure.
They're very energetic. They're in all the things.
Yes.
Love sports. So
Were
spend a lot of
you-
time in my car.
Same. When you were younger too, were you also busy, you know, as far as like
Oh, gosh,
activities?
yeah.
And did you play sports or?
Well, I was a dabbler, so
Okay.
I dabbled in all the things. I had a hard time like sticking through.
Sure.
I played tennis throughout high school, and I loved that. My brother played hockey, and I felt like as a family, if you're involved in hockey, you know how that works.
Sure,
And so
yes.
that was time consuming, but in a really great way. We
Sure.
loved it. I was kind of a rink rat.
I was going to ask, so your brother played, and so you were the sibling who was
Along for
around.
the ride.
Yeah.
Yep.
Around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was really active in all things as far as school goes, from, you know, editor of the yearbook and president of student council, and, you know, I did all the stuff.
Yeah.
So very active.
Okay.
And my kids have sort of,
Yeah. Also
we've
that.
kept on that route.
Yeah. So what are they doing? Are they?
The boys are in, let's see, my youngest, Cooper, who's in first grade, is currently in soccer, and he also plays basketball and baseball. And then the older, the third grader, is really into basketball, is also playing football.
Okay. And you also work?
I do.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So 2 parents, both with jobs, 2 kids, and involved in all
hustling.
the things. So yeah. And you're really in the throes of it with 7 and 9. I mean, this is the time. You know, they're not small anymore.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of maintenance and providing opportunity and supporting them through that. And
I feel really, I guess I'm grateful that my career is in real estate. I've worked for First Weber for over 15 years now, so I'm kind of a lifer, which I don't think you see as much of these days. But real estate does allow for a lot of flexibility, but it also comes, there's sort of, there's strings with anything. And I would say the downfall is that we're always connected. It's not the type of occupation where you go, you clock in, you're there, and you leave.
right.
It's sort of with you all the time.
Yeah.
And so I would say a big struggle I have is that balance component. You sort of, when you did your intro and you were talking about balance at one point, I don't know, I'm kind of a believer that balance is sort of bull. Like, it's not, there. You can't constantly be.
Yeah. This is important. We should talk about this.
You can't be balanced. There's no such thing. And so I would say with my career, it's more about being present, right? And being mindful of that as far as like being where your feet are.
Sure. Yes, definitely.
Because it's so easy to pick up the phone or, be distracted with it at sporting events or, to and from different places, shuffling the kids, to take that call, to jump on emails and be responsive. And so it's more of like an ebb and flow that I'm constantly striving for.
Sure. Can I ask how you do that?
Well,
because I mean, there are a lot of women, and parents just in general, or just, individuals, we shouldn't group people, but, just trying to figure out where to put the attention.
Right. I'm not an expert by any means, but I really do try to stay mindful about being present. Like usually in January, people like to, set their intentions for the year in whatever capacity they do. I'm kind of like a believer of a word of the year. I think it's just a little simpler.
Yes.
And so mine tends to be present, and the idea of being, like I said, like being where your feet are, right? And avoiding other distractions, which is so much easier said than done.
It is.
Especially in my industry, because, if there's a contract, the time's ticking, and we have to be responsive and we have to be available to our people and our clients. But everyone's human, and I think they also get that you deserve to have a family and to have a life. And so I'm pretty organized, and I think that helps a lot, right, as far as a calendar goes, in detail and time blocking, right?
Yeah.
And I also believe in going into the office. I think that's helpful. I had a hard time, like, working from home during COVID, for example, especially with young kids. And so when I'm in the office, I'm there to work and focus on, those items. And when I'm home, it tends to be more home and family oriented.
Yeah, there's less gray area there, because you're in a space where the focus is supposed to be on one thing. I always found too, when I left the house to go have a job, do something else, like that was fantastic. Because something was giving you a reason.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like, okay, I'm leaving my kids and they're second and all of this. It was like, no, I'm obligated to go here. And also I kind of like having an obligation that isn't.
It makes me a better mom,
parenting.
Because I needed to check out and be amongst adults and have adult conversations. And, I think it's kind of, with work, it's just about showing up. And so part of it is getting dressed and being there. And, I think that's just a big element. So I like going into the office and surrounding myself with other people. And honestly, I'm too distracted at home with laundry, and
there's too many things
I can't work when all of that's going on around me. So that's been beneficial to me too.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say about going into an office or having somewhere else to go is you kind of see your kids with fresh eyes then when you come home, because you weren't there for every single thing. They get to tell you things maybe you didn't know. And I think there's just an appreciation there for the time you do get to spend with them. And
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The funny thing is kids always think, especially that age and really until they're like 8 or 9, they think you already know, you know? And so that was something I didn't know for a long time. And one of my daughters, I would be like, didn't you think about what they would, you know, if they would be hurt, or didn't you think how that would, and she was just like, because no, they don't
Right.
think. They think everybody has the same, well, they don't think that consciously, but they're operating like everybody has the same perspective.
Right.
That was revolutionary for me to figure that out. So I'm
Right.
like, wait, why am I even asking her this question? She doesn't realize there are different perspectives.
No,
So.
no. And it's also funny because, like with my oldest, it's tricky to just hear, you know, you have to ask the right questions in the right way, you know, to get the information out about the day.
Yes.
How was your day? You're just going to get good,
Yeah.
fine, right? So we try to dig in a bit more to get to really what happened today, right?
Right. Something specific.
Yeah.
You know,
What was the best part? What was the worst part? You know?
Or if you know their friends' names or not enemies, but if you know the kids they don't get along with or something like that, you know, using those specific names or scenarios. How was lunch? What happened at the table? One thing I used to do was there was a specific time one of my kids came home and reported that kids were throwing food, you know, in the lunchroom. And I was like, oh my gosh, should they have been doing that? No. Were you doing that? No. What if I asked, I don't know her friend's name, Ben. What if I asked Ben if you were doing that? Yeah, he'd say I was doing that. You know, she was
Yep.
little, so it's like trying to, you know, dig in more than just receiving that first
Yeah.
report.
Well, I'll get a play-by-play of the football game at recess, but it's the classroom activities that I'm trying to learn a little bit more about.
Yeah, and those football plays, I mean, they're pro level when they're reporting on them.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of drama
So much. Yeah.
at lunch recess during the football game.
Same.
Those teachers out there are saints. So
Oh my gosh, yeah. They have a special quality to be
yeah,
able to do that.
they do.
Thankful for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's circle back. So grew up here in Sun Prairie, and then you went to La Crosse. That's not an uncommon path. I mean, there are a lot of kids that go from here to there. I know that because my daughter she doesn't go to La Crosse, but in the area, and so many kids kind of take that path. So were you there with people you knew, or?
I was, you know, obviously I guess being that, like, I've been at the same job for 15 years, I'm really close with my family. It wasn't too far away. Like, I think there's something, if someone were to psychoanalyze me, I don't know that I love change, but it was only 2 hours. I loved La Crosse. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
My roommate freshman year is still one of my very best friends today. We went to high school together.
Oh,
and
that's great.
We roomed together there, which made that landing, I think, a little easier for me.
Definitely.
And yeah, but I had a great experience there. I loved it.
And then came home. It's far enough, but not too far.
Oh yeah, I came home. I'm very close to my parents. Unfortunately, they spend about 6 months of the year now in Florida, which is great to visit, but they're a huge support system for us. So that's a little tricky to navigate with them being gone physically. I mean, we FaceTime like practically daily, and they're very involved in our lives. But you know, it's okay. We've got a sick kid.
Yeah.
We don't
I need
have
you to fly back.
people here.
Yeah.
My in-laws are in Rhinelander, so they're 3 hours away. You know, so that's been tricky to navigate. But yeah, we did end up back here, and they live in the Madison area when they are home.
Oh, sure.
which is
So
nice.
close enough.
Yeah,
Again,
they come back next week. So
Yay.
shout out Gigi and Papa. We can't
Welcome
wait.
back. There's plenty for you to do when
Yeah.
you get back. Okay, so then after La Crosse, did you go right into First Weber? Or?
I spent a year in a different field in banking, and then I had actually interned at First Weber throughout college.
Okay.
And, you know, I think honestly, regardless of what educational path sometimes you take, relationships play such a role in opening doors and where you end up. And so because I had that internship, one of the owners was a next door neighbor growing up, right?
Oh, perfect,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, and so that went well, and a position opened there, and so they had contacted me, and I've been there since. So my role has changed over the years. For the last probably almost 5 years now, I'm the managing broker of the First Weber Sun Prairie location.
Okay.
So we have about 50 agents or so based out of that office. And I'm mentor, support,
Sure.
kind of the leader of that location,
Okay.
and what that looks like.
I mean, I wouldn't have guessed. I don't know a lot about real estate, but 50 agents, that seems like a lot.
Well,
to
it's
somebody
the
who's
herding
not.
cats a bit sometimes.
Yeah.
They're all independent contractors.
Okay.
It's an awesome group of people. And, you know, some work from home, some come in every day.
Yeah.
Some do tons of business, others a little here and there, right? That's the beauty of,
Yeah.
you know, running your own business. But it's fun to show up for people in really different ways, depending upon what their needs are.
Yeah. There's enough variety
Oh,
there
yeah.
and keep
Yeah.
it interesting.
Yeah, very, very
It's like you have a
interesting.
home base, but every day is maybe so different, especially, you know, if you're selling real estate, it's not the same
No, it
client
changes
all the time.
It changes
so.
all the time. Our industry is really fast paced, and everyone approaches it so differently. So it's fun to meet them where they're at and help them build their business in a way that's genuine and authentic to them. You know, how Rose and Michaela have built their business
Yes.
is very different from, you know, someone whose office is just next door to theirs.
Sure.
So that's fun. I enjoy that. It keeps me busy.
Yeah, and there's enough variety too in people that are looking for things that it's helpful to have people who approach that differently because, you know, it's not cookie cutter
No.
by any means.
No.
So just to go back to something you said about relationships and how your neighbor, you know, was in a position to ask you to come work there. So relationships, and I talk about this, you know, in my business too, it's really what you have to be good at. And you can get good at that. You know, don't have to be good at it out of the chute, but building relationships is really what makes your life strong. And, you know, in work, family, school, all of those things. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, just your approach, because you have to do that so often in your job too?
Sure.
For you, and then also, you know, if somebody just doesn't think they're good at it, you know, like maybe, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I like that you brought it up.
Yeah, no.
like-
Well, and I think, you know, to sort of tie that into motherhood, I think that's something that a lot of moms deal with, because you mentioned that it can feel lonely even though you're surrounded by people. And I think a lot of moms strive to build relationships with other moms, right? In like that motherhood arena.
Yes.
And I think that can be challenging and sort of intimidating, right? As like
Yes.
adult women to make friends at the playground. But I don't care who you sit across from. I think you can find common ground. And so I think it's sort of about searching for what that common ground is.
Right.
And the benefit of motherhood is that we have
have
that,
kids.
right?
Yeah.
And so I would say even in the last few years, it's been really helpful to me to sort of find my community. And I don't think it happens right out of the gate when you have like a newborn at home. And as the kids have gotten older, it's almost through them, right?
Right.
Sitting on, you know, the sidelines at games. But I think you have to remember that everyone feels that way.
Right.
It doesn't always look like it.
Yeah, I think that's hard, you know, as a mom. It's and we've talked about this on the show too. This some expectation we have that we're supposed to be having it all together,
Oh,
and no one else is thinking that, but we think people are thinking that, and they also don't have it all
Right,
together.
right.
Somehow we're giving them credit, and
Right.
they're due credit for
Right.
you know things, but so that's kind of a weird thing in just motherhood.
yeah.
It's like you barely made it to the game. You
Oh.
forgot, you know, the juice and the blanket and all the stuff. So
But
now
that's
you're
the
suffering.
common ground, right?
And that's why,
And
yeah.
those are the conversations to have because, you know, if I want to build a relationship with someone, I want it to come from a place of authenticity and transparency and, you know, somebody who seems to be in the trenches just like I am. Quite frankly, if someone is overly put together, right, and it's this Pinterest perfect,
How'd they get like
yeah, we don't have anything in common, right? So I'd rather jump into the nitty gritty and, you know, and I think that's where, as moms and women, sometimes we need to also ask for what we need, right, as far as help goes. And
Yes.
so the kids' activities kind of opens a door to that, right? To be able to say, oh my gosh, you've got 4 other kids, you've got to get to that other soccer game. Let me take Johnny home.
Right.
Those, I think, are really easy ways to start to build relationships because you're providing something that's really valuable and helpful. And then they end up doing the same in return.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you start to have this community. I found that to be really helpful.
And even just to do that in the everyday, like if you shift your lens to see what other people need,
right,
you feel less worried about whether or not you're fitting some mold or, if other people are whatever they're thinking about you. I mean, as humans, we're designed to judge. You have to judge that. But the next step is, what am I doing with that judgment?
Yeah.
And I think, your initial judgment doesn't have to be the long term. It's just you are designed to discern. You have to do that because there's so much information coming at you all the time and for safety and whatever else, just as a human being, our design. But then it's like, okay, I judge that situation, that person or whatever. Now what do I do with that? Do I explore that? Do I see if I was right? Do I see if they need something?
And so
How
often
can I
we're
help?
not right.
We're so not right. You can't, you don't have enough information to even know. But your brain will make a judgment. And so that's why it's important to train yourself after that, to ask yourself some questions. Was that valid? Should I dig in more to that? Or
And to ask questions, of them, whether you're at, a little kid's birthday party and you're at a gym, right? I can remember just sitting there and everyone's kind of just on their phones. But it's more enjoyable to engage.
I think people want that.
I
it's
do
just
too.
we have a thing to do if it's not happening.
Right.
That's pretty comfortable because it's, we're in control of that. And but mostly, and the kids too, they want to do something other than look at screens. But now they don't always know how to do something unless it's presented to them or something like that.
Right.
But even as adults too, you went there to watch your child do something extraordinary, but there's this feeling that, do I have to say something that,
Yeah. And that's where I just think, you just start by asking questions or, to your point, providing help, right? How can I help? Like, how can I fill a void there?
Right.
And people are so appreciative. I would be appreciative if someone was like, hey, I'd love to bring Cooper home. That'd be great.
Yeah, for
I'll
sure.
bring Johnny next time,
Right.
And all of a sudden you start to build this relationship.
Even if they don't take you up on it or whatever, it's just
I was like, oh, that was really nice. I'm so glad they offered.
And then you can learn to be the resource too. So if you don't know how to ask somebody for help or you don't know how to be the first to talk, just bring some things with you that are the resource. So I've gotten to a point now where my kids are all old enough. The first time I went to a softball game, travel softball, I was ill prepared. It was hot. I just went to it.
Yeah.
My daughter and my husband went to the game ahead, so they had her things that she needed. It was so hot and it's multiple games. So you're sitting there, I know so much better now.
Right.
Okay, but I did not know. So we're in the vehicle between games. I have the air blasting, fuel is just whatever. There's like 7 kids in there. And I just was sweating, just watching and like, okay, I need a wagon. Okay, what does that person have? I need a cooler. Like I was just like making notes. So now it's been years, a couple of my kids are in travel ball. And they all play, so I don't have little kids with me when I go to a game. It's usually just me because my husband and I have to split. I take a full double-decker wagon. It's got, I like to think it's luxury for me, but it's really just in case, know. I've got the tent, the chairs, fans that can hang from just over the years I've gathered all this stuff, and it's a little weird to just show up as an indivital person, like a double-decker wagon.
You're there to save the day for somebody else, though, that was your old self, right?
First aid kit, like wet rags, and if nobody needs it, it's fine. But boy, if somebody has a need, I'm like, no, just step into the office here. I've got what you need. But so you can become the resource.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then that
with
can
some
be a gathering
snacks and
spot.
some Band-Aids. Like, that's all it takes.
Yeah, the umpires are coming, everybody. But so So that was a tough lesson though, because I was like, I'm never doing this again. It was just so miserable. And so I was so distracted because I wanted to watch her, but also I was like, is it like heat stroke here? And of course, exaggerate, but like my discomfort.
Well, and as a parent new to that, when you look around, it does seem like some of these other people have it so together.
What? Oh my gosh, they had so many things.
Which is intimidating, and that's where I think just having other moms and having relationships with people is so helpful. Even in the beginning stages when the kids were getting involved in things, I remember the first time I went to sign my oldest up for, it must have been T-ball, like I missed the registration deadline. And if you're not in the know, it's hard to know.
Yes.
So now having like a community or a little text chain, it's like, hey, this was posted today. You sign up, or is so-and-so doing this? And there's so much out there now. It's kind of overwhelming.
Oh, for sure.
Knowing what to sign them up for and what not to and when. And, you follow some of these Facebook pages and different things, but are you on this email list? And so it's nice to just have other people to ask questions to, especially if they've got older kids and they've gone through it.
Yes.
Because it's like, what, where, how?
I know. And then you're just showing up and like everyone's leaving.
Oh, that was at a different park. We're at the wrong place.
So sorry. Yeah.
So, and half of these sports, they communicate with you on different formats or different apps, and some emails. And so it's just nice to have other people to bounce questions off of and who are willing to share, who've walked that path before.
Yes, definitely. So helpful. And then be that resource for other people.
For someone else.
So, okay, so your kids are 7 and 9. So after you got out of college, you said, and you met your husband in college, and then you came back here. And about how long until you had your first baby? Handful.
So I graduated college in 2009, and then Mike and I were married in 2013.
Okay.
And then I had Grayson in 2015, and Cooper was they're just under 2 years apart.
Okay.
In 2017.
So you did, after you got married, you had a handful of years where it's just the two of you, like working and
trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yep. We bought a house. I bought a house. He was my roommate when I was 22.
My gosh.
Yeah. So we were, he was a roommate. I had another friend as a roommate, and you're trying to figure it out.
Also fun.
Super fun. We loved it. It was a blast. Yeah.
So you bought a house at 22, so real estate was already like a calling.
Yeah.
And then, so you lived, this handful of years or whatever, not quite, without kids, and then you have your baby, and you're ready for that.
Is anyone?
Well, this is the point. It's like no matter how, because no matter if you plan it out or it's a surprise or whatever, you suddenly are responsible for this person.
Right. It was a shock. I love being a mom and I love motherhood. I'm not at all the type of mom I thought I would have been.
Oh, yes.
And I think if you asked my mom that, she would be surprised too. My house is kind of wild and loud. The boys run the show. I expected to be I thought I would be a little more regimented, I guess.
Sure.
Than I am. But my first Grayson was a tough baby, really tough. So those first few months were very lonely because I remember feeling like I couldn't go anywhere.
Oh, right.
I was very, I guess, bound to the schedule, like nap and feeding. And I found recently a book I kept, tracking everything. And it's just so wild to think how consumed I really was in all of that. But because he was, I guess you could say colicky, for lack of a better term, but I felt nervous to go, to dinner, to take him places. And I was so jealous of people that just, I thought I'd be one of those that just strapped the baby on and he came everywhere. And I wanted to be that so badly, but I was just so anxious and nervous about how he would be. And, time helps in all of that.
Sure.
But it was challenging right out of the gate. And then we had Cooper when Grayson wasn't quite 2. So we were really in the throes of it.
Let's
just keep,
We're already in it.
Yeah, exactly. I love how close in age they are.
Yes.
And they've really become super friends. I mean, trust me, they get at it. But they're really lucky to have each other. And so I'm really blessed that it worked like it did.
Sure.
You know, I feel super blessed that that happened. But they keep us on our toes. And Cooper was a much easier baby, but I was a much easier mom.
Right. I think, you know, that comes with a little bit of experience, and also with 2 kids that close in age and that little, it's like you just are like, look, I'm tired, you know, like, it's not that I'm not trying, but like I can't hold myself to this standard. Like this is crazy. And so I think you know, maybe this was your experience, but you start to really understand what is required for the day, you know, or the next hour. Maybe you're just trying to get through the next 15 minutes.
Well, and I think you find that it's really beneficial to give yourself the same grace that you would give any other mom, right? The things I would tell other moms, I wasn't telling myself. I know I struggled specifically with breastfeeding and felt so guilty, right, that didn't work and carried that. And, you know, Grayson's great.
Right.
Everything worked out just fine.
Yes.
But I was concerned about what other people would think, and no one cares.
People are trying to get through their own existence. Yeah.
But that was challenging.
Those first couple of years too, and the other thing is, you know, the babies can't communicate well like you'd like them to just say, hey, I need my diaper change. You know, but that would be a little weird, but they can't tell you that. And so it's so much just investigating and learning noises and patterns, and also you're exhausted, and it's temporary. But you don't feel like that.
It doesn't feel like it at all. No, and I remember people saying, you know, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. Like it gets easier in a sense, but also not, right? Because it just changes. It's just different.
Yes.
I would say it's now at this point, it's not that like all consuming, right? 24 hours a day, but the worry is different. You know, how you carry the worry for how their day goes and how this is working for them, and is different. But it's just not quite as all-consuming, that constant. I remember my husband coming home, and I'm doing hot laps, like, around the dining room table, pushing him in a stroller, because he liked, you know, to move, and all the things you do, but...
Yeah. And then you don't even realize it looks a little bit wild until someone else is in the room with you. And then it's like, oh.
Well, and I think I struggled a lot with the need to control all of it myself. And when I finally recognized that my husband is more than capable, and I asked for help, it was probably a pretty pivotal moment in my motherhood journey.
Yes.
That Mike is incredibly capable. I was not giving him enough credit. I didn't think he could do it. Now, would he do things the way I would? No. And I had to become like okay with that.
You have to be okay with that, yeah.
So that was challenging. But once I did, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think that he's an even better parent and partner to me today because of it. He's a super involved, active dad. But had I not given him, and you know, I don't want to say that I gave that to him, but had I not given him that opportunity, I was controlling it all, and I wasn't letting him in.
Right.
And so by doing that, I think really it was better for everybody. But it didn't come easy.
No.
To give up that control.
I don't think I mean, there are a lot of, you know, women who are like that, who are in relationships. And I think men too, and not speaking, you know, I hate to generalize, but listen, we're pressed for time. So, but just, you know, husbands, dads, I think a lot of times, of course, you know, they're capable and they want to be in it. And, like we had the baby, so, and we're nervous, you know. I think it's not really driven by like we want to devalue them, or we don't think that they're capable or something like that. It's just we're so worried that if we don't do it, you know, that we know how to do it. And if I surrender that to you, that's scary.
Super scary, because he's going to do it wrong.
He's going to do it wrong.
And he probably will a few times, right?
Right.
But like that's okay.
Right.
But that like revelation did not come very easily for me.
Right.
And by the time Cooper showed up, I think that made that process that much easier because, you know, unfortunately for Grayson, we learned, you know, we learned with him.
Yeah. He's okay.
He is.
He doesn't really remember that part.
No.
But yeah, that's such an important point. And the other thing we don't do, and I'm right there with you in having experiences like this, we don't remember that we weren't perfect at it either.
Oh, right.
We're not humble enough to say, you know, the diaper came off, you know, because those are, you know, the things that aren't going to be done right the first time are like inconsequential. You know, they're things you can fix. And men are probably going to ask you, you know, they also don't want to ruin their baby or whatever. Right. So, you know, if you approach it more like a partnership, and part of me wishes, you know, I could have done that, you know, better. The other thing it does is it allows your kids to build a relationship with their dad that you aren't meddling in, you know, all the, you're allowed to have the baby now, you know, all packaged up and neat, and then one little cry and like give it back,
right?
You know, so it's hard for them to stumble through things and build bonds and relationships too. So fortunately for you and your kids, you know, that you recognize that. I think that's difficult for a lot of women.
I think so too, and you know, and I had to just look in the mirror and say, you know, I don't want to build a wall here and prevent that,
right?
Because I think he was kind of like, you tell me, right? And so in some respect, I had to ask,
right,
and still do. But I think as women, we naturally don't jump to that, even with friends or relationships, spouses. But you have to ask for what you need.
And you have to realize it's okay.
Oh,
absolutely. Doesn't make you less of a human.
No.
Doesn't make you inept.
No, I think it just makes you a better communicator. And I think people on the other end are more responsive.
And it allows you to grow as a person too.
Yeah. Mike was like, you got to tell me. You got to lay this out.
Yeah.
I'm not a mind reader. Oh, you're not? Okay.
And I think, you know, he probably wanted to support you
Yeah.
and then figured, well, the way to support you is to not get involved in like what your business was with the control. It's like, if I don't bother that, that's supporting her because that's what she wants.
Right.
And meanwhile, it's like you're frazzled
Yep.
and then there'll come a point when you're like, well, he doesn't do it.
Right.
It's like, well, you know,
Right.
you didn't allow it. So
Yeah, and everyone has their strengths, and so I think you just have to find a way to lean into those. And I would say, you know, I think a lot of moms, I feel like I tend to carry like the mental load, right, of our family.
Yes.
As far as like managing calendars and doctors and dentists and activities. But that doesn't mean there's not a place for additional support, right? Whether it's, you know, the routine we've found, right? Mike takes the kids in the morning. Like, you know, I might help everybody get to the door.
Yes.
But then physically, you know, he's taking them to school each day. A lot of the sports practices, right? He takes care of transportation here and there, and gives me more time to maybe manage some of those other things.
yes.
But we have to just sort of lean into what our strengths are. I'm not going to coach basketball, but he is.
Yes.
So that's great, right? And I appreciate that he does that. And so I think we just have to kind of find our arenas.
Yeah. I mean, it's all an adventure.
Right.
Yeah. Because what else would you be doing? You know, if you surrendered all that stuff because the other person can do it, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I like to know what everybody's up to. So I want to carry that load because I want the details.
Right.
And I want to know who's going to be there and
Oh,
I have
absolutely.
a craving for that.
Yeah, I'm not someone that could wake up and say, tell me where I'm going today, right? I would need, no way. But my husband would be like, where are we going today? Okay, we have this birthday party, we have this, and then sometimes it's like, hey, there's like 3 birthday parties this week. Can you take care of a present for so-and-so?
Right.
But that's where I've tried to get a little better about, again, asking. Because it's not on his radar that there's 3 birthday parties.
No.
Because
probably
and I'm
fine with
okay,
that.
yeah, and I'm okay carrying that load, but then I need to stop and pause, and if I need help, I need to ask for it. So that's, I think, been a big help in our
we have this skylight calendar. Have you
Oh,
seen
yeah.
this? Okay.
A girlfriend of mine has one.
Yes, so did one of my girlfriends had one. And then I was like, I should get one of those. Because I wasn't really a calendar person. I've had to teach myself because I always thought I could just keep it here. And then I was like, where are you? So I learned to do that. And so she had one, and that looked so cool and color coordinated. She's very organized, and I admire her. And so I'm like, I'm going to do that. So I brought that home. Everybody got the app.
Yep.
It's color coded. People load things in. Okay, so it slipped off a little bit, over the holidays. And then I asked everybody to please, and my kids are older, so everybody can do that. They all filled in their things. I asked my husband to fill in his things. Everybody filled in their things. And it was great. And then I went to adjust something.
Oh, no.
And from the app on my phone. And then I was like, what? And I'm not inept for technology. I don't know. It was just a thing. But it looked like I deleted.
Oh, no.
No, everything. It just looked like just a blank calendar. So I just didn't tell. I just didn't tell anyone. Because I'm like, they don't look at it anyway. They're loading it in there for me.
Yeah.
That was a lot of work. And so they did their part. And I praised them for that.
Yeah.
And then I just didn't say anything
Yeah.
for like a week. But then eventually it showed back up, which I was grateful for. And then I told everybody that I wasn't going to tell them and stuff like that. But the calendar piece, if you do it right, can be so helpful. And it gives everybody an opportunity to be part of that. So it's not just, it is for me, but it's also for them. And then they're aware of, and your kids are little, but I have teenagers and
the visual's really important.
Yeah.
We keep a digital calendar, my husband and I invite him to everything, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a spring fling on Friday. So, I put it in the calendar and he's invited. Sometimes I'll do things like yard work and I invite him and he declines, but you
like $20.
Yeah. So usually, everything is loaded in both of our calendars. Mm-hmm. But this summer, the ages of the kids, I'm finding there's a lot of camps.
Yes.
All these camps, for 2 hours a day here and 4 hours here, and how we're going to figure all of this out. I'm still not sure, but I went to Target and bought just a big paper, old school calendar and sat and put everything in there, and it sits on the kitchen counter. And it's interesting how the boys have taken notice.
Yes.
Right? And they start to pay attention to birthdays or even like Mother's Day around the corner.
Right.
I don't think that would have ever been on their radar. And so it's sweet that they're recognizing it, or just different events that are going on. And if something's missed, right? Why, this on there, this changed. And so I'm happy to see them take a little ownership over it so that hopefully we get to a point where, they can participate in the calendar.
Yeah. Well, they're at least understand it.
Yeah.
And then they also will hold you accountable, which is great.
Yeah.
Because then it's like having a calendar that talks to you.
Yep.
Because they're like, we have to go. We have to go,
Well, and my oldest struggles a bit with ADHD and some emotional regulation, and a big component that helps is sort of having routine.
Sure.
And being able to know like what to expect, right? So that we're always setting like, hey, like you have so much time left. All right, this much time left. Okay, remember we're going here, we're doing this, right?
Yes.
Because that just helps him in his like daily routine. And so I'm finding, I think the calendar also plays a really helpful role. Yeah. And just presenting the big picture as to what everything looks like.
Things don't feel so out of control, or like you don't have any part in organizing that as that.
Yeah.
So my son, he's got 3 older sisters and then me, so he literally has had to do nothing for himself. And so now we're paying for that because he's 11. He's very sweet and he's great and he's good at what he does. But he'll be like, what do I have today? And so we've, for his sisters and I were like, all right, we created this, but also it's enough. So, so now he really wants to know. It's almost like he's been deprived of being part of that. He has, guilty of that. Because we just got things ready for him or, shuffled him here and there for a long time. And now he has this awareness. And he's like, well, where do we go? I don't want to go to that. You talked about being in the hockey rink and attending. It's a lot of siblings to just be watching, games and all of that stuff. And now he has an opinion about that. And this is a whole new growth for us because we're like, you have opinions?
Yeah.
Like, how did all 4 of us not raise you to,
Yeah.
So, but he, it's better if he knows what's coming because then he can prepare,
Right.
he
It's
can
just
get his
funny
own
how this little
stuff.
calendar hitting the kitchen table, like, it was like, oh, this is helpful. This
Yeah.
is good. And they're recognizing it. And what, as a family unit, what goes in to getting from place to place, right? And everyone kind of working together.
And that's a good age to start that because then as they get older, they can contribute to that, and they can kind of have an awareness when somebody asks them to do something. Oh, they already know
Yep.
it's Mother's Day,
Yep.
or whatever. So good strategy.
We'll see.
Okay, so now they are, you said 7 and 9.
Yep.
And man, busy. 2 boys, always moving. We've talked a lot about screens on here too, but it sounds like not good or bad or whatever, just that they exist. But your kids are involved in a lot of physical activity. So I think you said your youngest played, you listed 3
Yep.
sports. Does your older son also?
He was 3, he's down to 2 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Feels like enough, especially depending on what they are.
Right.
Some sports go.
Well, I think that we're finding that too as they get older. Everything feels like, I think unfortunately, they get sort of pushed
So early.
so early to be sort of specialized in a certain arena. And I kind of hate that for them because I want them just to be kids and play.
Yeah.
But my oldest also loves one sport specifically more than anything else and wants to do it more often.
Yeah.
So that now leads to additional things kind of all year long.
Yes.
But he likes it, so
As long as that's like what he is
right.
driving toward, I mean, that's great to be able to support that.
Well, it's funny, hockey, I bought them skates, put them in lessons. I was like, yes, we're going to do this hockey thing.
Yeah.
They hated it because, of course, right?
because
So-
you knew it and interests,
I know nothing.
family.
And I knew that. And I thought, all right, well, that's out the window.
Yeah.
So, but I'm a big advocate that I think I enjoy being busy. And I think it's healthy for the kids to have things that they enjoy doing
Yes.
and being active and participating. And they've made such great friends, which has been really fun to see the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And now they're making all sorts of plans and,
Yeah.
which is really cool. But I attribute a lot of that to it doesn't have to be sports necessarily, but for them it's sports, but just to getting involved in
Yes.
something that they're passionate about. And that helps with the screen time thing.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, well, go shoot hoops in the driveway. Weather plays a factor for us a bit around here with a lot of
for
the
a
sports.
long time.
Yeah, the winter can get long, but they get their fair share of screens, though.
But being involved in sports or chess or whatever it is, it really helps the parents, I think, in managing that.
Yeah.
Because it's not like hours and just full afternoons where you're trying to, battle that. Or you have to come up with the game now that they're going to play.
Well,
or-
exactly. Like now it's like, okay, well, we have all these practices this week. And I'm like, okay, that's what they're doing after school. Versus, I don't know what else. I would be digging
Yeah.
to find something, I guess, to keep them entertained and off of tablets and devices. And
Yeah, that's a little bit different than, previous generations where you just had to come up with a stick.
right.
Like,
Well, and
trying to
now
get
we're
across
starting
something.
to give them a little more freedom with their bikes.
Yeah.
My oldest got one of the watches where we can track.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're on like watch number 3 because
well, it's the thing.
that part's tricky. But we can track where he's at, or we can message him or call him.
Yeah.
So we're experimenting a bit with some boundaries.
That's a new thing, too, in parenting is just letting your kids go into the world. Yeah.
Together.
Thank goodness.
The oldest and the young. And I'm like, what happened to your brother? I followed them recently in my
so
car.
Funny.
And the one, of course, went off. And the other one was going to his friend's house and went the wrong way. I found him down the road. And I'm like, where's your brother? But they're really good.
Was he like, what are you doing? They don't
think-
know. They're
I don't
little.
even think he questioned, like,
Yeah.
why is mom here?
Of course she is. We all have the same perspective.
right. But it's good for them. And, my husband and I were just talking about this recently because he goes, when were you riding your bike? Like, just kind of off on your own. I'm like, a lot younger than them.
For sure. We were just,
Yeah.
I mean, you and I aren't the same age, but even before that, it's like, good. We hope you come back.
Yeah.
I mean, it just wasn't a thought. You know,
know.
they
I
didn't
know.
have a choice as parents. They had to let you go. There was no way to track. And
There's something really great about that. like for everyone.
We loved it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And to go off to the park and play, right? And you know,
Yeah.
their imagination when they just are sort of just outside,
Yes.
right? Because they rode their bike to the woods and you know they're playing. You really see it come out, which I love.
Yeah.
Because so much is so structured with school and sports and all this stuff
Yes.
that there's not as much room for that. So we're trying to give a little more space for some of that.
Yeah. That's great.
I don't know.
Well, I think too, you know, when we were young, we didn't have anxiety about things.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure people didn't, again, with the generalizations, but it's like our parents weren't communicating anxiety to us about where we were by constantly tracking us.
No.
Now, it's everybody knows where you are all the time. Okay, but if we dug into that, why? Yeah. And that is because there's something to be afraid of, you know? And so it's this constant communication of just an underlying sort of panic, anxiety type thing.
Right. So you just want to walk it's like this line that you have to walk.
Yes.
And so we're balancing it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
The technology, it's there, right? So we're like, well, we'll lean into it. So if the watch helps and gives me some peace of mind and maybe gives
my son
him
has a
some
watch
peace
too.
of mind too, then we'll start there. I'm going to hold off on all the other things as long as possible. But the watch, we'll start. We'll start small.
My son has a watch, and it's great because it's strapped. I mean, your watch 3, we're probably on watch 3 for him too, but it's attached to him, which is great. And now he's going to be going into junior high, which I cannot believe. But anyway, he's like, hey, you know, the girl's got a phone, like, and I'm like, where's your water bottle?
Oh, right.
You do not know. We've been chasing that for ever.
Right.
Probably because your sisters or I were carrying it for you, but still, I like that the watch is there. He's not going to lose it. I'm not going to lose him, you know, so I'm really trying to just stall on that whole phone thing.
I know.
More than losing it,
I'm not
everything
looking
that comes
forward
with
to being
it.
asked at one point,
Yeah.
you know, down the road, but for now we're okay.
And who knows? I mean, at 7 and 9, by the time middle school comes, who knows what will be the next.
I'm sort of hoping we can all like band together as moms and be like, everyone hold out.
Yeah.
Because, you know, someone caves, I hate to say that, but right, and then it's like this domino effect, and I'm like, okay, if we can all hold out together.
Yeah. Well, you can justify anything, you know, so of course you can argue yourself into anything. And so, yeah, that's hard when the solidarity is not held up.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, I mean, it's a long road ahead of you, but that's great. And I hope it goes slow because it is, it's just lovely, you know. As difficult as it is, I think as challenged as we are as moms, and, you know, we're put through the ringer a lot, and we asked for it. And, you know, to your point about balance, it's like nothing is balanced really ever, but it's, you know, choosing what you are paying attention to.
Yeah, like finding that flow, right? Like that it's sort of like at least it's a steady up and down. You know, if it's too like this too long or too like this too long, right? It kind of needs to ebb and flow. Because, I mean, quite frankly, this isn't perfect either. No. Right? Because sometimes your energy needs to go towards work, right? And sometimes it needs to go towards family, right? Or towards you, whatever that looks like. But I think it just is a matter of giving space to all of it.
And choosing when that is. And I like how you talked about being present. And, you know, I remember going to the kids' events too, and really just put your phone in your purse. Of course, if you have multiple kids, it's like leave the ringer on, but you know, try to focus on what's in front of you. That is challenging. You know, if we were perfectly balanced, we would be bored and we would cause some chaos for ourselves because we're also designed to do that and solve problems. So, so yeah, you know, it's like day by day and event by event, child by child. Do you want to say anything else about, you know, your job or anything else that you think might be beneficial for viewers regarding motherhood or even just being an individual? Kind of putting you on the spot here, but
I guess the only thing maybe we didn't touch on that I find is something that I've struggled with, and my husband's always really good. He always says, oh gosh, what's the saying now? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how it goes? I don't know. I always screw up
I think
sayings.
it's
Joy,
close. Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
But I think as moms, we tend to compare, or it's human nature, and social media and everything you see doesn't help in that regard.
No.
But when you sit down and have a conversation, I think everyone is more alike than they are different, right? And everybody is in the trenches, and sometimes what you see is not the reality of what's really going on.
Right.
But it's easy to get stuck in that like comparison mindset, right? Where the grass is always greener, there's always more, better,
Right.
bigger, you know. And I know for myself, it's something that I need to remind myself of sometimes, like, you know, how grateful I am for what I do have, right? And there are good days and bad days, and sometimes what you see online is, you know, that's everybody's like A-roll, like perfect footage, you know?
For sure.
And so not to kind of get stuck in that comparison mindset as moms. That's one thing I know I still struggle with.
Right. And I mean, that's a fantastic point. And, you know, a couple of things from that, you know, when you say you're grateful for the things that you do have, and we don't take time to just say to ourselves, I mean, look what I've done. You know, this was hard. And I'm grateful for this because without me, this wouldn't exist. And it's not like build yourself a church. It's like, why, you know, thank yourself for showing up every day, even though it was hard,
Right.
for putting the effort in, for making the list, for showing up at the birthday party.
Right.
All things that, you know, I mean, you could have opted out, but you didn't. And so, yes, there's more. Yes, there are goals to be gone after.
Right.
There are people who have achieved other and different things. And even in scrolling, you know, that comparison, it's like, well, I don't have that. Okay, maybe the way to frame it up is, I don't have that. And I certainly didn't have to go through whatever that person had to go through to get that. And that's one shot, just one shot of one moment in their life.
Right.
And maybe there's something in there you do want. Maybe you want to look like that. Maybe you want to feel like that. Maybe you want to visit that place. Fine. Look at that picture long and hard and decide what's one thing in there I would like. Oh, they're in Italy? Someday I would like to go to Italy. Put that on your list.
Right.
You know, you don't have to want somebody's entire existence because you don't want their entire existence, especially if you don't know what it took for them to get there.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to remind ourselves of that, you know, and if you're scrolling, you know, and everybody looks like they're having this great time, we forget that, like, it's not a perpetual great time.
No, and I think it's easy for our kids to get caught up in that too. You know, one thing I'd love to get better at, and we kind of, this is one of those things like, oh, we're really good about, and then we fall off. But when you're asking the kids about their day or what have you, right? Or you're sitting at the dinner table the couple times a week, that might happen. But what are you grateful for, right? Because I feel it's so easy to get swept up in all of like the busyness of our lives.
Yes.
And the stuff and the things. And sometimes I feel like, gosh, I'm not trying to raise like entitled,
I know.
ungrateful kids. And so you just want to remind them a bit too. Like, what are you grateful for? Because sometimes I need a reminder, so they must need one too.
Right.
And you know, some days it's cold, and it was like I had a heated seat in my car today. That was like that's a super luxury. I'm super grateful. It doesn't have to be like this, you know, super.
You don't have to do a
big,
monologue. It's like,
it can
just
be little
grateful.
things. You know, I saw a robin today. Spring's around the corner. Like, there's just really great things around us to be appreciative of. And that's something I know I have to work on. And it's something I would like as a family to see us do more of, right? So that the kids start to do that more too.
You can build that habit in that because they will adopt that then, and it changes their lens for how they see that, and it changes your lens if you're doing that.
Right.
You know, to look at something, and you can catch yourself doing it too. You know, if you're just grumpy or like it's raining, but then it's like, well, we need it. You know, what comes
and
from it?
now look how green it is outside.
Yes. So, or, you know, that's kind of an easy one to do. But, you know, even in the throes of the most difficult things in your life, like that is rough. But to be able to have a lens that says like, even though this is rough, like, what am I grateful for in my life? Because you cannot avoid the rough things. You're just not. Like, same thing, you know, the people who post, and I post pictures, I'm not trying to post pictures of my most difficult times. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not, I could do more of that, maybe. But those pictures are like, hey, they should be celebrated. You know what? If you got to a point in your life where you're enjoying something this much, celebrate that. Take a picture. Have a memory.
It's your memory book, right? To look back on. Or those are so great when you get those reminders. Oh my gosh, 5 years ago.
Yes.
You know, so sometimes it's just for us. It isn't necessarily for anyone else.
Right. And it's okay to do that, you know? And then when you're looking at those things, to think like, well, none of us get a perpetual existence that is only the greatest moments, because they wouldn't be the greatest moments. They'd just be a moment.
Right.
And so, yeah, that comparison thing, that's good to bring up. Just remind people.
Yeah.
You know,
I need a reminder from time to time, so.
Now you can watch this show. I send it to you
There
as
we
a
go.
reminder. Okay, well, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah.
This was fun. It was nice to get to know you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
appreciate that. Okay, so don't forget to keep your perspective and step into somebody else's once in a while, like we did with Meghan here today. Stay resilient, continue to show up for yourself and your kids and the other people who need you in life. Continue to pursue your goals, create new ones. You know, if you're scrolling and you see something you want, that can become a goal. So continue to pursue goals, get up, be resilient. And don't forget that you are in a group of about 2 billion moms across the world, so you don't have to feel alone. And when you do, you can come watch one of these episodes, and we're here for you. Thank you.